Mojang, if you're listening, please stop taking features away from Bedrock. Of course, that's an easy thing for me to say, but there is a much more complex message to convey. I'm not here to pretend developing the world's most loved game is easy. It's a hard job, and I'm really impressed and honestly appreciative of the people doing it, but there is one key area that the Bedrock community wishes you could improve on, and it relates to parity. I know your time is valuable, so I'll make this as succinct as possible. There have been 4 features removed in just the last year from Bedrock Edition that the community at large did not want. These are 4 changes so small the average player probably doesn't see them as an improvement and probably doesn't notice them at all, but the hardcore, the most dedicated Bedrock players are the ones who will seriously notice that they are missing. The first example is the cobweb to string recipe being removed in the 1.20.10 beta. I'm bringing this up now because it's technically still a beta, and so I really want anyone who's listening to consider just undoing this change. It is one that has no benefit to any players. It will just stop people who would go into a mineshaft to get string from being able to do that. Nerfs to weaken certain features and encourage others is a really important thing, but the cobwebs were never the major source of string, and ultimately it's just taking one more option of getting them out of the game so that more players have to go to a string farm, or worse yet, a strider or cat farm. The only thing worse than a cat farm is the second example of boats no longer being able to fit horses in. This is a key part of the overworld progression. Before you get an elytra, being able to get around your world relies on having a horse for the land, a boat for the ocean, and being able to combine the two gives you the third place solution for best way to travel around your Minecraft world right after elytra and blue ice boat. I guess maybe also after the Nether portal, but my point here is to say that this was a 4th best transport method, 3rd best maybe at best, and this is something that Minecraft removed because, I quote, horses are larger than boats and should not fit, despite that same update adding turtles into the boats. Then we've of course got the campfire damage. Campfires used to light mobs on fire and damage them, and they removed that in an update because, we'll dive into the reason why. It's the exact same reason that the 4th feature of the Shattered Savannah also had its hue changed. This is what the Shattered Savannah used to look like, and this is what the Shattered Savannah looks like now. What have they done to you? Why did they take one of the prettiest biomes in the game that people would actively seek out and remove the color? Well, I'll give you the reason why. It's parity, which is a really important thing for Minecraft. Parity is taking the 2 editions of the game that exist, Java and Bedrock, and trying to smooth out all sorts of weird differences that exist between the 2 of them. The same is true for the beetroot that you can see over here. Beetroot is not just a very questionable crop, but it started its life as an exclusive for the Bedrock edition of the game. It started on one edition, and then they moved it to the other one so that if you were playing either game, you knew that beetroots would exist. The same is true for bridges in villages, iron golem spawns, and the way that all of these mechanics work. Trading used to be wildly different between platforms, and all of these issues have been fixed, which is a real big win if you're a Minecraft developer. Really big thank you for all of these things. This is an important part of Minecraft, and we can't pretend parity is a bad word because it's what's made so much of the game so unique and interesting, and indeed possible to begin with. But the issue comes when that same mantra is applied the other way around to features like the horse boat in the Shattered Savannah, or the cobweb, or indeed the campfire. These are all features which had a positive, they had an existence on one platform, and then Mojang decided that they would remove it from one so it matched the other. Imagine if beetroot, instead of being added to Java Edition, was removed from Bedrock. You would technically still get parity from doing that, but you would end up with a Minecraft with less crop diversity. In the same way, removing boat horses from Minecraft Bedrock technically reached parity between the 2 of them, but you have less diversity and less gameplay options for Bedrock or Java players than if you just simply allow people to ride their horses and put them in boats if they want to on either edition. This is an issue that I don't think Minecraft themselves really like being stuck with. I mean, even when they updated the world generation algorithm so it would be the same on both versions, they didn't make it so it was just perfectly one or the other. They rewrote the engine from scratch altogether to make a better world gen for both editions. But imagine if instead of doing that, they used the world gen from the better edition on the worst edition. That might be better in some ways, but imagine if they'd done the thing where they took the worst version of Minecraft and made that the default world gen. I think a good example of this might be that a lot of people really like the way skins work on Bedrock. You can have 3D elements on them, you can have all sorts of character customization things on here. Imagine if they took the Java customization and put it on Bedrock. That would be ludicrous, it would be throwing away a lot of work, but that's something they did with regards to the players for reasons that aren't even immediately clear. In fact, I'm sure Mojang has many voices in their team from people playing Java because it's the edition that introduced many to this beautiful world filled with air, grass, and lava. However, I think it might be missed that many players didn't, and the Xbox 360 or an iPad are the locations of their formative memories. Even someone who started playing Bedrock 2 years ago doesn't deserve to have some of their favorite things about the game removed, and I think that's something we should all be able to get behind. It doesn't matter how long you've been playing this game, if it is one of your favorites and you put hours into it every day, I think your opinion is worth listening to. But it does seem, as a Bedrock player, that the overwhelming majority of voices that are heard are Java Edition ones. When there is a bug spotted on Java that breaks some redstone or farm contraption, it ends up being fixed near immediately, even if the feature that they were working on was intended, because they do believe on having a very healthy community. When it comes to Bedrock, it feels like there will be a big feature and many people might say that they don't want it, but that doesn't stop it from just being removed. It feels as though the Java development is an active engagement with the community, whereas the Bedrock process is just telling the community what they like and they're going to have to deal with it. This actually does have some benefits of development, but I think it's not the way that most people want the game to be developed, and that's why this open letter is here. It's because I think there are all sorts of issues with the idea of removing things in the name of parity. In fact, if you think removing things just because they're not on one edition and they are on the other is a good idea, remove emotes from the game, or the funky marketplace button because it's only on one edition and not the other, or remove hardcore from the Java edition. If instead Minecraft is two good games and there's a lot of great features that are on one but not the other, I think there should be a rule that something shouldn't ever be removed from one edition for the sake of it, even if there is absolutely no way it can be added to the other edition, and so it's absolutely required that it be removed at some point. I think there is zero way this should take priority over the actual parity issues. An example of this that Mojang has been very pragmatic about is the differing redstone between Bedrock and Java. The Bedrock redstone is the way they intend it to be, but they're leaving the Java community with their air quotes broken redstone because that's what the players on that edition want. Maybe when they fixed every other parity issue that exists in the game, they can come back and deal with redstone, but I think until then it should definitely take priority. And in fact, if I was going to give my open letter a short enough format that it could fit in just 4 bullet points, maybe something that could be easily shared on social media, here is what I think the community would put in them. One is that parity should be a priority only when it adds new features, not when it removes them. Removing features for parity is just wasting everybody's time, and that's because adding features to the edition which don't have the feature is better than removing them from the version with. I don't think you can take any exclusive feature from Bedrock or Java and say that it would be better to remove it from one than add it to the other. The only way this makes sense is if your idea of equity or equality is seeing one person who has $5, one person who has $1, and saying the only way for them to be equal is to take $4 away from the guy with 5, and it's like, no, there's a much better solution to that. You could give both, you could get them both down to 3, or you could take the guy at 1 up to 5. That is much better. Everyone would rather be richer, I'm pretty sure at least. Anyway, the third point is that the community can't decide everything in the game. This is something I think it's important for us to admit. However, I think that maybe we should be the voice on a parity call. Is something parity or a bug, or is it something that needs to be removed or added? Please ask the community, ask the people playing the game, pouring our lives into it, rather than just assuming, I bet we should just do it and see what happens later. And if the plan is to do it and see what happens later, please listen when people say, by and large, even the person who creates the bug report, that this is not a thing that's wanted. Now is the time, supposedly, for 1.20.10 to go through the community process. Please just listen to what we think. That can include people who believe the recipe is bad, but also it can include people who think the other way. Listen to both sides and have some form of community engagement, some form of, listening to people if you're going to do something that is actively removing. Also, please fix the horse boat, the windswept savanna, and the cobweb crafting recipe. You might argue that if you added these features, it would be an exclusive and so a parity issue, but in that case, ask the Java players if they want it, because they can have it too. Maybe give them an experimental snapshot with it and see what they think. I think these are all no-brainers that I've yet to see a single person say, oh yeah, Minecraft would be so much better if we didn't have them, because again, unlike say, if they made a change to iron golems that made them double as strong, that would be beneficial to some people and worse for others. If they made a change to the combat system, then that would change the way people play the game in positive and negative ways, but there are some features that just seem like no-brainers. So with that said, I hope that anyone from Mojang has at least given this a listen. If you disagree, that is actually something I would love to hear too. I do not mind the idea of just floating ideas, but what I don't like is when the entire community has one opinion and there's no explanation as to what happens there. So any amount of communication on this one, any amount of explaining that actually this would really break something big planned in the future, whatever it is, I would love to hear it. But for now, if any of these 4 things were taken to heart, this video would have felt entirely worthwhile to me. My channel is clearly dedicated to doing weird, wacky things in the Bedrock edition of the game, but also informing people about it, and one of the weird side roles we've taken on is fighting to make it better. I think that Bedrock is a great version of the game. It's not the weird mobile spin-off, but actually one of the really valid ways to play, and so please subscribe if you want to support more of this happening. It is something that I think is important, and if you do too, I'd appreciate any form of support or sharing of this video, because if I could just get one person from Mojang to listen to this, I would feel as though we'd done something good for the Bedrock version of the game. Anyway, to keep this short, I'm going to end now. Thank you for watching, and let's listen to some Relic again, actually.